Good afternoon, everyone. This side Sanjay Suman from Social Auditor Organizations. Welcome to our program. Getting started with ESG. So today's our speaker is Ms. Pallavi Singh. She is ESG and climate change expert and advisor, ESG product and market strategy at INRAT. So I'm welcoming to Ms. Pallavi Singh, ma'am, for this program. Welcome, ma'am, and good afternoon.
Thank you so much. So, shall we get started?
Yes, we.
All right. So, welcome everybody to this session. Today's topic, like it's already been said, it's about ESG and climate change. One of the most important topics which has gained a lot of prominence and importance of late, right? And I think everybody on this call must have heard of this terminology, and definitely a subject which is extremely close to my heart. Ever since I started my career, I have been working in the field of climate change and sustainability. So let me just quickly give a quick introduction for myself. I'm Pallavi Singh. I have in total 15 years of experience in the field of climate change and sustainability. I started my career as climate change, a GHG assessment expert, and since then I have worked with multiple corporates in India and abroad, and financial market participants, rating agencies, to help them cope up with this topic. And I've worked in the field of consulting. Then I've also been associated with the multilateral funded assignments with Ministry of Power and so on and so forth. So yeah, I mean, presently I'm working as an advisor and product head with INRAT. INRAT is one of the rating agencies, Swiss-based rating agency, wherein we help financial market participants to cope up with the ever-increasing pressure of maintaining their portfolios, making their portfolio integrates ESG in a 360-degree manner. So without wasting much time, I'll quickly share my screen and get started with the subject for today. This is going to be an extremely basic presentation, because what we understand from this particular ESG and climate change related subject is we keep on talking about, big terminologies. For example, we talk about net zero, we talk about just transition, we talk about, loss and damage, we talk about portfolio management, we talk about sustainable finance. But before we get started with all these jargons and get completely consumed by all these jargons, it is extremely important that we understand the basic of the subject, because that is what the starting point is all about, right? So let me just quickly bring my screen up and we'll get started from there. If somebody can confirm, am I audible? Is it clear?
Yes, audible.
Yes, very much.
All right, perfect. Allow me a second, I'll bring my screen up. Okay, so here we go. Let me just bring it. Great. Let me just. All right, fine. So let's get started. As the topic says, it's about getting started with ESG. It's not about much of the technicalities, because of what I have actually experienced is that we keep on talking about ESG, we keep on talking about sustainability, but many a time that so happens that we get so consumed by the terms and jargons that it loses its inherent meaning to the entire topic, and it ends up damaging the entire concept. So let's just quickly understand what ESG actually means, right? So ESG is actually a term which is derived out of the broader term, which is sustainability. Now, what is sustainability? Why did it actually come into existence, right? Sustainability, let me just not use jargon. Let me avoid using jargon, because the session has been organized to help everybody with a basic understanding. I would not intend to make it more complicated, rather simpler for everybody. Sustainability in its simple and basic form, it's nothing, it's just our ability to survive, and survive in such a way that we consume natural resources or stuff which is available to us in a way that we do not compromise on needs for our future generation, right? It's only about responsible consumption. So for example, we keep on hearing about news related to water scarcity, right? We keep on hearing stuff about the resource depletion. We keep on listening to resource about biodiversity degradation, right? The aspect is to live and consume in a way that we do not hamper the rights of our future generation. It's as simple as that. It's people, planet, and profit, right? It is that. Now, what is ESG, right? We keep on hearing that, okay, ESG regulations, we have to take care of it. It is something like, added burden for businesses, for investors, for employees, right? For everybody. But that's not the case. ESG is a framework which is actually used to look at companies and businesses and identify how well are they doing in terms of sustainability. So when we talk about sustainability, it's about ethical, responsible consumption, right? And responsible behavior. ESG, it's just that we made it a little more tangible so that it becomes easier for investors, businesses, rating agencies to monitor the progress, right? Because when we say sustainability, it looks huge, right? You have to live in a way that you are not harming others. But what does that mean? It really needs to have some tangible, measurable aspect to it, right? So that is where the concept of ESG is actually being evolved or introduced. So now, what does it mean? So when we say E, what does it mean? What does we mean by S? What does we mean by G, right? So what do we actually mean by E is all about environmental topics. It focuses on environmental aspect and greening aspect, like how any company, any investor is performing in terms of their natural impact, right? So for what kind of impact are they causing on E part of the ecological ecosystem? So that is where environment aspect come into picture, which takes care of aspects like climate change, emissions, because we know, we do have man-made climate change emission related stuff as well, but more or less it comes from anthropogenic activities. Anthropogenic activities would be anything which is man-made, right? So for example, your power plant, your consumption, right? When we wake up in the morning till the time we sleep, or maybe for companies, for any organization, their operation, in a way, they keep on emitting these emissions. So that's one. Second, it's all about pollution. Pollution, we know, it's when it's air pollution, it's actually being emitted. It's all about your, carbon dioxide, particulate matter, which causes respiratory illness, and so many other stuff as well. We keep on hearing a lot of things about the air quality index, right? So this is what we talk about when we talk about air pollution. Second thing is water pollution, all about, dumping waste and water or effluents and on those kind of, water bodies. Biodiversity, energy efficiency, and waste management. So similarly, we keep on talking about in this aspect under environment umbrella of ESG, we talk about how environmental aspect is actually impacted of the planet. That is one. Second topic, S stands for social. Social is all about, like they say, when you have to grow, you have to make sure you're not growing alone. You have to grow in an integrated manner. When we say integrated manner, it's all about inclusivity, right? So for example, like when we are growing, when organizations are growing, they have to make sure society is also growing, right? Their employees are also growing. And it includes everything, right? It's about your gender diversity, it's about equal behavior, it's about how you're making sure that CSR activities you are indulged in are leading to larger good of society on a whole, right? How are we helping people raise their standards, the value of statistical life is going up, and how are we measuring impact in terms of the livelihood, capability to earn livelihood, and so many other things are being taken care of. So it is about larger good of the society, and how do we promote that? Third aspect is all about governance. This actually examines companies' leadership, because it's very important to demonstrate ethical behavior by any of the organization, right? Or be robust when it comes to their governance. When we say governance, it's all about how entire operation is being taken care of, what kind of board you have, what kind of representation you have, how good is you and solid is your code of conduct, how exactly do you get indulged in taking care of anti-corruption and ethical aspects of performing the business, so on and so forth. So this is a very high level introduction of how sustainability and ESG are important. One important point I would like to mention here is we tend to use these terminologies interchangeably. We keep on saying that sustainability is equal to ESG and ESG is equal to sustainability. That is not the case. Sustainability is a larger, aspect and agenda and horizon. ESG is just a framework which is being developed by investors, for investors, to assess how companies in their portfolio, how other companies are integrating sustainability in their overall operations and journey. So this is how it is. ESG is a subset of sustainability. How do we see, like we keep on saying that it's an added burden, we have to do ESG, why should we be doing this ESG thing? It doesn't impact our business. Climate change is not I mean, of course, if we go into detail, we know how it actually does, but I'm just talking from a layman perspective, that if we might be forced to address climate change and ESG related aspect, first question would be, my business is doing fine, why should I take extra pain and headache to make sure that, okay, I'm calculating my carbon emissions, I'm making sure I have to invest into CSR activities. When everything is going fine, why is it needed, right? Because simple, if going by logical understanding, we have to have some kind of drivers, right? Which is why we will start integrating these things into our day-to-day operations. Otherwise, without any push or driver, it becomes very difficult to do something which needs your effort and which might not yield into any kind of financial benefits. While it might look like that ESG doesn't lead to any kind of financial benefits, there are multiple ways and ample ways it actually contribute to resilience and business continuity related aspect of your organization, right? Let's just look at how, right? Globally, how actually sustainability and concept of ESG emerged is, globally it was realized with rise of, SRI, like socially responsible investing, that this is something very important. Then UNEP came up with their Brundtland report, wherein the concept of sustainability was introduced. And thereon we have a lot of these frameworks, a lot of these consortium, a lot of these bodies, time and again, they laid a lot of focus or emphasis on importance of dealing with sustainability related aspect. There were some visible evidences, right? Because of which we've had a lot of bodies up, for example, I'm sure everybody must have heard about, UNPRI, which is United Nations Principle for Responsible Investment. We do have Paris Accord. Paris Accord is something about reducing the temperature, right? Making sure that we are limiting the temperature to 1.5 degrees. All these nations have been assigned certain kind of targets as a part of the Paris Accord. Net zero is also something which has come out of those kind of developments as well, right? So one thing, if we see globally, right, these alliances, investor groups, everybody has realized that this is something, this is not an option, right? Sustainability is something which is the only way to survive, and this is something which needs to be integrated. Even if you are not directly impacted, you would have your investor which are falling, which care about their risk, right? So for example, if we go by a basic example of why should I do it, right? But I have an investor is operating out of Europe and they have some kind of regulations, right? If they have to declare that how their portfolio is doing in terms of sustainability, then it will trickle down to me as well as an organization. Similarly, if I'm working with a client, my client wants to reduce its emission and I'm a part of their supply chain, it again will trickle down to me, right? I'll have to do it. Similarly, if I'm into consumer apparels or any kind of industry wherein I have end customers and they are becoming more and more conscious about sustainability, right? It again trickles down to me and becomes important for me to make sure that I integrate all these aspects of sustainability, right? So it's not just directly in terms of regulation or anything else, but it's a global driver. You can face pressure from your investor, and investors might face pressure because of regulatory aspects. And also for any investor, it is very important to make sure their returns are risk-free, right? If they have very high level example, again, just to make it easier to understand. If today I'm an investor, I've invested into one of the companies wherein they have their assets located in some flood prone region, right? So then I would want my portfolio companies to assess their climate risk. If at all they have these flood related, prone regions, they have their operations based out of such places, or if they are lying under any kind of risk, if at all they are prone to such risk, what exactly are they doing? Are they shifting their base? Do they have some aspects to take care of, making sure that how they'll cope up with this physical risk of climate change? This is just one example, right? So you can face pressure from your investor, you can face pressure from multiple stakeholders. It could be regulatory body, it could be your client, it could be your consumers, it could be your employees, so on and so forth. Third aspect is there are a lot of regulations. Regulations are being introduced as we speak, right? This entire space is so fast evolving that every day we have one or another regulation being introduced, in one of the geographies that is there. And we also see with Gen Z and millennials are becoming more and more aware and conscious about their change, about the choices they make, right, for themselves, be it about working in an organization, be it about what they want to spend on, be it about what kind of products they want to use in their day-to-day life, and how about their behavioral and consumerism, responsible consumerism related aspect. So in a way, even if it doesn't look like that climate change or sustainability can impact your profitability, but in all possible way, it can definitely impact your profitability, and introducing climate change related aspects or ESG related aspects will definitely help you mitigate risk. So which is why ESG becomes important, even though it doesn't seem to, right? So, okay, so now we understand that our stakeholders definitely want us to do these things, but what exactly are stakeholders, for example, they expect out of these companies? They expect resilience, right? Even if we do not look at it from preachy aspect, because sometimes it might just look so preachy that, okay, you have to do it, you should do it for environment. No, it's not just for environment. It's about your own good. It's about your financial returns. It's about your profitability. It's about your business resilience, and it's about your business continuity, right? So first and foremost, I think for any business, the goal is about resilience, right? You would not want your operations, your productions, your revenues to get impacted. Sustainability becomes that important aspect to be integrated, which can take care of your resilience. That is one. Second is robustness, right? When we spoke about the example, wherein how exactly can you make sure that you are mitigating all possible risk related to climate change in your operations. So for example, introduction of carbon fee, introduction of carbon tax, right? Water tax, something like floods, droughts, right? So many other things. I mean, how exactly are you taking care of? In India also, we see so many rules and regulations are being introduced, right? We have BRSR. India has also committed to net zero target by 2070. We do have our NDCs also for short term, and then we do have so many aspects of green fund by RBI. It has been introduced. So there are multiple things which are being which are being introduced on a daily basis. So it becomes very important for any business to make sure that they are robust in their operations and mitigating all possible risk in a best possible fashion. Third is about futuristic approach. All right, so when we look at these regulations, be it in Europe, be it in US, be it in India, or any other Asia Pacific, economy, these aspects are actually introduced from bigger to smaller companies, right? So, for example, if you see that today it's only BRSR only talks about top 1,000 listed companies, right? Then probably we need not do it. But that's not the case, right? These 1,000 companies would actually want to take care of their supply chain as well, which is where MSMEs also get impacted, right? It's not just about today that whether or not we are falling in the direct aspect of ESG management. It's about your future fit and resilient approach, wherein you can have the good foresight of mitigating these risks. Fourth part is responsibility. You have to demonstrate that how exactly you don't intend to grow alone. When you're growing, you would want to make sure that all aspects of society you're contributing towards all aspects of society. And Ministry of Corporate Affairs, we already have corporate law in place wherein businesses have to dedicate certain part of their entire revenue and profitability towards larger good of the society. And these projects are to be such that it should not be directly benefiting corporates in any way. It should rather help society to grow at large, right? Fifth part is transparency. This is very important for your stakeholders as well. Everybody must have heard this term greenwashing, right? What is greenwashing? Greenwashing is something wherein you are not so responsible, resilient, robust, and future proof, but you still want to paint that image for your operations that you are all of it, right? So that becomes very important. Sometimes we tend to do that unintentionally, because these regulations are changing so quickly. There are so many standards, reporting standards available. It gets very difficult for organizations to understand that what exactly to opt for. But still, if we are not transparent, then it's not actually taken as a good sign. So we have to make sure that whatever we are disclosing in our annual reports related to sustainability, or in our CSR report, sustainability report, so on and so forth, it has to be a clear and a very honest reflection of how mature are we when it comes to our sustainability. If you do not take care of any of these aspects, it actually can lead to non-compliance, which can lead to penalization, if not directly by the government, maybe in terms of you can lose interest of your stakeholders. Investor funds also, because like I mentioned, right, there are a lot of in India presently there we do not really have a lot of stringent regulations, but if you see European countries, right, we do have very solid sustainable finance framework under which you have SFDR, you have EU taxonomy. So all these, investors, they are bound to report on adverse impact of their, which we call as PAI, principal adverse impact indicators. So they are bound to report on how their investments are actually causing any kind of adverse impact to ESG related parameters, right? So if we do not, take care of the boxes which are mentioned in blue, we tend to lose interest of our investors, because ultimately whatever we declare, this is to be used by our investors to make their disclosure. If we are not maintaining transparency and we are not resilient, robust, future proof and all, our investors will definitely not be, right? So it's very important for them to make sure that portfolio companies are doing good. Reputational damage, definitely, we keep on reading so many articles about greenwashing and companies making fake claims about their maturity of ESG. So reputational damage is definitely very difficult to deal with. It leads to a lot of controversies, and then it has its own set of repercussions which nobody would want to face. That is one. Fourth part is ESG ratings and rankings. It leads to low ESG ratings and rankings. In the slide ahead, we'll definitely get to know about what exactly am I talking about when I'm saying ESG ratings and rankings. But generally, for example, I also work with one of the rating houses, right? Rating houses are actually responsible for analyzing organizations' performance, and they assign them some grade, right? These grades are actually used by investors to judge which of their portfolio companies are doing good or bad, or how in terms of their maturity of ESG, right? So if you do not do any of this, it will lead to low ratings and rankings, and then ultimately it will impact your reputation in the market, and also you'll end up losing interest of your investors. That is another aspect. Now, here we talk about ESG. Now we understood that why ESG is important, how is it different from sustainability, and how does it, what exactly stakeholders are expecting out of it. The fourth part is, what are the major constituents of ESG ecosystem? What are the important aspects which we need to take care of? So one, corporate, financial market participants, and rating agencies. These are the three most important players in the ESG ecosystem. How? Corporates are general companies, entities, which we talk about. They are generally responsible for managing and implementing sustainability practices, making sure they are managing their environmental impact, well, and taking care of social responsibility and good governance as well. So, for example, any organization, be it the service industry, IT industry, or maybe in the field of manufacturing, they tend to consume resources. They do have their employees. They do have a governance mechanism in place. They do communicate with the social aspect of the society, be it in terms of their consumers, their suppliers, their own employees, right? And also they indulge in CSR activities and employee volunteering activities, wherein they tend to, and they are very well placed to create that meaningful impact, both in terms of a consumption of resources and also doing larger good to the society. Why is ESG important to them, right? Because a lot of regulations are being involved and introduced at the corporate level, and it is very important for them to make sure strategies they have in place, policies they have in place, operations they have in place are very well aligned to make sure that their investors' expectations, which are like not just investors, rather stakeholder expectations, are being taken care of. Their consumers, their customers, their clients, and the investors as well. So, and their board and everything, everybody, the entire expectation is being taken care of. We'll see that how can they get started on their ESG journey in the next slide. Then we have financial market participants. These are essentially your banking agencies, your investors and asset managers, and your insurance companies, right? So financial market participants become very important in the ESG ecosystem because they tend to invest in these corporates, right? And again, have that power to make sure that government also realize that it's not just, you cannot just keep on introducing regulations to corporates. If at all you have to involve or maybe introduce any kind of regulations for corporates, you have to actually make sure that you're taking care of financial aspect as well. Why? Because this is the direct driver, right? If your investors ask you to do something, then definitely we are bound to do something, because it all flows down or comes down or trickles down to financial aspect, right? And investors directly deal with financial aspect of any of the corporates, right? So a lot of these regulations earlier we used to see that they were only being introduced at the level of corporates and companies. But now, if you see in Europe, a lot of regulations are actually introduced at the level of investors. They have sustainable finance guidelines, and then they have EU taxonomy. They have to make sure companies they are investing into are generating these kinds of returns, not monetary returns, but rather in terms of benefit and impact on environment and society, so on and so forth. And why are they very important, right? And why is ESG important to them? Because ESG integration will help them identify, it's also an opportunity for them. We are looking at the field of green bonds, and lot of investment opportunities are arising for green projects and social projects, right? So they have a lot of power to change the ESG paradigm, and make it shift towards a better version of the society itself. But more than that, also it's very important for them also to mitigate their risk, right? It's not just only for societal good or anything like that. For investors, like we spoke about climate risk, right? It is very important for them also to make sure the companies they're investing into are safe. For example, for any of the insurance companies, they have to underwrite their risk, risk underwriting, claim management, these aspects have to be taken care of. Similarly, for banks, right, they have to make sure that they introduce responsible lending practices, which is one of the material topic when it comes to ESG in banking. They have to make sure that the way they are financing projects, it should actually enhance the building or investment into green projects, right, which will ultimately lead to all good causes, right, whether in terms of environment, whether in terms of societal good. So yeah, as financial market participants, they hold a lot of importance, and they also are in the position wherein they can influence corporates and portfolio companies to do larger good. So that is there. Rating agency is the third agency, where you must remember that last slide we spoke about low rankings and ratings. For financial market participants, be it investors, asset managers, or insurance companies or banks, it sometimes becomes very difficult for them to take care of their entire portfolio on their own, right? It's nearly impossible to judge each of the companies and see how good are they doing, how bad are they doing, even though they get involved in all these aspects. But it's always good to have any third agency wherein they can judge corporates' performance and give them any kind of rankings and ratings, right? So we do have Sustainalytics, we have InRate, we have MSCI. All these are the rating agencies. If you have heard of names of these rating agencies, what do they actually do is they assess performance of organizations and then they rate them. Right. So when investors are taking care of their portfolios, and when investors are taking care of trying to make investment decisions, they can refer to these rankings and ratings. And these rankings and ratings are actually a reflection of how good or bad company is doing when it comes to integration of ESG in their end-to-end operations and services. So this is one. This is how it looks like. And why, most important aspect, government has decided this is all that why should you do, your stakeholders and everything, but regulations play super important part when it comes to management and driving ESG integration in the entire ESG ecosystem. So if we see earlier, when we used to see it all started in 1990s or something like that, started with UNEP's report, or maybe 1980s, right, with social investing, with GRI, global reporting initiative being introduced, so on and so forth. But now if we see all these geographies, even though we see some kind of resilience in Florida, Northern America regarding, we do have some anti-ESG regulations as well. But still, if we see the largest landscape looks like that there's an introduction of a lot of these regulations at each of the levels, right? So earlier we would see regulations only at the level of corporates, but US also is making it mandatory. By SEC has come up with this acts wherein they not only want to make overall ESG performance reporting mandatory, but they also are looking for climate change specific reporting, right? So, I mean, if we look at one topic, ESG is an overall overarching terminology, but if we have to pick one topic, which is of utmost importance and which is gaining a lot of prominence in the world of ESG, is climate change. Climate change is one of the topics under environment umbrella of ESG, right? So yeah, so US and many countries, if you look like at how regulatory landscape looks like, this slide gives you a very high level idea into how regulatory landscape has actually been designed. So this is more like that we have regulations being introduced at each of the levels. If we see America, we do have SEC is introducing, something for climate as well, and something for overall ESG reporting as well. If you see in EU, we have full-fledged sustainable finance package, which comprises of CSRD, which is Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive for corporates, which not only covers, any organization which is there in which is EU based, right? But if you are originally based out of any other country and you have origin from any other country, but still if you have some kind of operations based out of EU, you'll still be liable to take care of these reporting requirements. So Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive is what is being introduced in EU. Earlier, it was NFRD, Non-Financial Reporting Directive. That it was made compulsory that, why do we keep on saying non-financial terminology? The use of that terminology was heavily criticized for the only reason being that everything related to sustainability leads to, all financial related aspect. Why do we call it non-financial then, right? So the terminology was changed and definitely more stringent reporting requirements were introduced. So CSRD is something, it's not come into force, but yeah, from next year onwards, it will be in force. Similarly, for investors, they have introduced SFDR, which is Sustainable Finance Disclosure Requirement, under which all of these investors and insurance companies and asset managers, they have to report on how their investments are promoting sustainability, right? And when we say sustainability, they have made certain kind of categorization. I mean, few of you, or maybe all of you, must have come across something like Article 8, Article 9, Article 6. These are the requirements of your financial product classification. When can you call your financial product Article 8? If it promotes any kind of sustainability related thing, right? So you can call it Article 8. Article 6 is something wherein you are not doing anything related to sustainability, so on and so forth. So these definitions have been introduced, and financial market participants are bound to disclose, and also they are bound to disclose on principal adverse impact indicators, right? There's a list of indicators which is being released, and as a part of this regulation, investors are supposed to be reporting on how their investments lead to any kind of harms. For example, it could be emission, it could be related to non-compliance to UNGC aspect, it could be something related to biodiversity loss, it could be something related to human rights, right? So on and so forth, or maybe something related to controversial weapons, right? So all these things. And then there is an aspect called EU taxonomy. EU taxonomy, again, is an activity-based taxonomy, wherein they have identified certain activities in certain niche sectors, and they have put it that how each and every activity, when can you call a particular activity taxonomy aligned, right? They have identified 6 important aspects, something like, let's say, climate change adaptation, mitigation, marine pollution related aspects, circularity related aspect, which is related to waste, right? And biodiversity related aspect. They have identified 6 such, aspects, and they want all these products and activities to contribute towards these good things. And then they have also identified social parameters, which they call as minimal social safeguards, right? MSS. And they want to make sure that activities are doing good for these 6 environmental parameters, and they are also maintaining minimal social good, which is being identified as a part of these regulations. So this is how robust it is. And now what started happening is they started sensing some kind of foul play. As governments and jurisdictions, they assume that FMPs have their share of financial or ESG related regulations, and so does corporates. But ERPs, ESG rating providers, right? They do not have any such regulations. So what if they are rating organizations in a wrong way? In not a rightful way, right? Then investors will get tricked into that, and they'll not be able to take correct decisions. So they started to regulate this place as well, right? So this is the third part of the ESG ecosystem is also being regulated now. ISCO is a global body, and they have introduced multiple aspects of that how these so for example, ESMA in Europe, Financial Services Agency in Japan, right? Financial Conduct Authority in UK, all these bodies using ISCO principles, SEBI in India, right? How can we forget that? So, and all these things are, the ERP space is also being regulated, and they are actually, given these regulations in such a way that they maintain conflict of interest, and then they are taking care of transparency transparency. They are making sure their products are labeled in such a way that they are reflecting on what all are they planning to offer in the market. So yeah, regulatory landscape is getting robust as we talk, and then there are a lot of regulations. So it's very important for all all of these members to comply with ESG related aspects. If for nothing else, then for regulation certainly. India, I'm sure everybody is aware of this thing. We already spoke about this bit, since we have lot of these regulations being introduced at the level of corporates. We have in India, we do not really have a lot of regulation at the when it comes to financial market participants, but we still have BRSR 1000 top 1000 listed companies are supposed to be taking care of their requirement. And now there is a introduction of last month as per the latest notification, there is an introduction of BRSR 4, wherein the set of indicators have been actually reduced, but assurance has been made mandatory. Supply chain has become important. ERPs are also requested to rate these companies on 4 mandatory indicators. So similarly, like we spoke that even if you are not directly falling under this regulatory aspect, but you might be a supplier to any of the global organizations, or there might be a case that you are a supplier or client or customer or anybody to the bigger organizations wherein they are trying to integrate ESG in a 360-degree holistic manner. So in a way, it gets trickled down to you as well. And also there was a report I shared on my LinkedIn as well. There was a report by Deloitte, right? More than 80% of organizations in India and worldwide, they understand and they realize that ESG and climate change is something which definitely needs to be taken into account. All what they were not confident about is how to get started on the journey, right? So sometimes there's just too much of an information. This is a new concept. It causes a lot of confusion because we have too many standards. We tend to use so many jargons, which does not make it easier for us to get started on the journey. Rather, it makes it more confusing. So this is it. And okay, but what are the challenges? Right now we understand we have to do ESG. Why do we have to do ESG? What is expected out of us? How is the regulatory landscape looks like? But then what are the challenges, right? Still, if we want to do, it's not that easier, right? And we already spoke about greenwashing related aspect. Why does it get so difficult, right? Lack of transparency becomes dealing with transparency becomes very important because we have several standards available, right? We do not really have there is no clarification, or maybe this is enough material available, but this word has actually gone from here to here so quickly. It is just too quick for everybody to understand how to integrate this bit, right? While there are a lot of technical aspect available, there's no simplified stuff generally is available, which tends to get organizations very confused. Even if they intend to get started, there's so much of confusion around how should we actually get started on this thing. Similar, the second topic is also related to the first one as well, ESG competency, right? This field, and this is a globally acknowledged challenge, right? ESG competency has become one of the most demanded. In fact, last week, I was reading one report by World Economic Forum, right? And sustainability jobs in the market, or maybe ESG-related jobs in the market, are coming next to AI-related jobs, right? So one of the most demanded skill in the market, but yet it also is leading to competence washing, right? Because there's so much of hiring going on, and ESG is such a vast subject, right? Climate change is a proper subject in its own self. Rating is one of the subjects. Sustainable finance is one, so on and so forth. Social aspect is another, big aspect to deal with. That how do we do impact creation and lead to society's larger good? So many other things. So ESG competency is something which has become a challenge to deal with. Even if organizations intend to get started, it becomes very difficult. Relevance, since there are hundreds of standards available, sometimes it's very difficult. Which standard should you adopt? Which standard should you go by? So for example, we have GRI, we have SASB, we have CDP, we have DJSI, we have GHG protocol, even we have TCFD, like I can talk about endless standards. We have value reporting framework, we have ISSB, so on and so forth. We have TNFD, right? So even though these standards are clearly different from one another, but there is no, if you keep on hearing these names again and again, it creates a kind of confusion that which is the latest standard it should be, referring to, what exactly is applicable to us, right? So that is another challenge which organizations and financial market participants are struggling with and struggling to understand, demystify the entire ESG, alphabet soup of ESG, if I may say. standardization. There is no same thing, there's no standardization in terms of standards. There are multiple standards, which makes it ever so confusing to understand that how to get started and which standard should you exactly be adhering to. And then dynamic capabilities. This field, when we were coping up with the subject of carbon footprinting, suddenly we had a concept of science-based targets, right? It's not something very easy to understand for an organization which has not yet started with their carbon assessment journey. And then suddenly you hear about science-based targets and it becomes very difficult, right? That how exactly it is to be done. And then you start coping with that particular aspect and you have a concept of net zero, right? And all these topics they are interlinked, right? You cannot really jump the step of carbon footprinting and directly do net zero, right? For you to be able to get started with your net zero journey, it's very important for you to assess and understand where you stand today. And then science-based target is something which helps you set your target in line with Paris Accord, right? Wherein you cannot set any target, right? The target has to contribute towards the global goal of 1.5 degree, restricting the temperature to 1.5 degree rise, right? And then the concept of net zero comes along, right? Which talks about your nature-based credit, which talks about your decarbonization, and which talks about your carbon trajectory in such a way that you should be able to reduce 90% of the emissions. And then, okay, you can probably offset 5%, but only by using nature-based credits and solutions, right? So that is another challenge. Many times I've come across people wherein they are also confused with the concept of carbon neutrality and net zero. So net zero and carbon neutrality, not just the same, but okay, that is the topic for some other day. Let's not get into those things. But yeah, these capabilities, these requirements are evolving at a supersonic speed, which makes it very difficult for everybody to keep up with the pace and understand how to make sure that you take care of all these aspects. Monitoring and evaluation, continuous monitoring and evaluation, one, it requires your ESG competency, and second, also it requires certain level of process and procedures in place, right? And so it becomes very all in all together, putting everything together. Sometimes companies intend to get started, but they find it very difficult to get that guidance that how should we get started? How should we get started on a climate change journey? How should we come up with the ESG report? And many times it's a very funny thing that we tend to believe that ESG reporting is one of our ESG goals. No, actually ESG reporting, it's just a reflection of how mature are you. Your ESG journey is actually something different. But yeah, when companies are not able to take care of all these aspects, it leads to their low ranks and ratings, reputational risk, we spoke about it, inconsistent stakeholder communication, lost opportunities, non-compliances, penalizations, and increase in operating costs as well. So how should an organization get started? This is the very important question. If we look at one of the primary standards, which was introduced, one of the first and foremost reporting standard, which was introduced, it's called Global Reporting Initiative, GRI. How should organization actually get started? Organization need to get started on their ESG journey by having a proper ESG strategy in place. They need to identify what do they want to do, right? And why do they want to do all of that? So they have to define their vision, their mission, their objective, or maybe the objective first, and then accordingly they can define vision and mission of their journey. They have to have their policies and processes in place. They need to engage with their stakeholders to understand that what are their requirements. For example, regulatory, definitely you would know, but it's always good to touch base with your clients, your customers, your employers, your employees, sorry, and your investors and your consumers, that what exactly, and your clients as well, and your suppliers also for that matter, that what exactly their pressing needs are, what exactly are their pain points, what do they expect of you from ESG standpoint. Similarly, a governance, to be able to take care of strategy, policy, and engaging with the stakeholder, there has to be a proper governance which is to be defined. A lot of organizations these days have started introducing sustainability committees, and they do have, and they're, sustainability is not just a side activity anymore, right? Because it directly is linked to your productivity and your stakeholders and your investor, that it has become a boardroom activity, right? A lot of organizations have introduced a position of CSOs, like Chief Sustainability Officers. CFOs are also directly taking interest in this area. And then, it has become a boardroom topic. Board definitely gets involved with these meetings and taking care of how you can manage all risk and be very clear when it comes to communication of your sustainability maturity. Fifth part is communication, because whenever we have been talking about ESG rankings and rating, So how does these ESG rankings and rating companies, for example, in Rate, the one I work for, and even MSCI and Sustainalytics and ISS, so many other agencies, how exactly do we work, right? You are basically marked on the basis of, it becomes one of the important constituents when any ESG rating agency, that judges your maturity is availability of your communication, which could be your CSR report, which could be your annual report, which could be your website disclosures on how mature you are when it comes to sustainability. So communication becomes very important, but it doesn't mean that communication has to be wrong or not transparent in any way. That has to be transparent, but we have to make sure that we are very honest in our communication, but we have to also make sure that whatever we are doing is clearly reflected. We neither have to underreport nor to overreport this part, because both of these, if we tend to underreport, then probably will not be able to present our proactive picture, which we ideally should. But if we tend to over-report, we'll be labeled as companies trying to greenwash, right? So either way, that is not good, and we have to be. This is a very important step to be taken care of. Now, in terms of activity, how can company get started with their 360-degree ESG integration? First and foremost step in any organization's ESG journey is materiality mapping. What is materiality mapping? If we look at materiality mapping, it's about identifying issues which are very crucial to organization's journey. What exactly does material means, right? If we go by the definition which GRI has put forward, materiality is something which can impact which is important to your internal stakeholders. Internal stakeholder could be your leadership, your board, so on and so forth, and your external stakeholders, which could be NGOs, society, your employers, your clients, right? So doing by this, you can, any which things which are important to your stakeholders will ultimately will start reflecting in your financial performance also, right? So which is why it's very important. Anything which is important to your stakeholders and anything which is important for your business profitability becomes material. For example, if I am based out of any production company, or maybe manufacturing company, and I do have big plants and industrial facility, employee health and safety becomes one of the important topic, right? Similarly, consumption of raw resources, right, raw material, that becomes very important. If I'm a water intensive industry, for example, in paper industry, water becomes one of the most important sources, then water becomes my primary topic. If I know my material topic, if I know that I'm operating out of area wherein water scarcity is being one of the problem and the issue is being on rise, right? So first step and foremost step, it's about identifying what is material to your organization. Second step is performance analysis. For example, if I identified that water is one of my material topic, let's just take an example of water only for this entire chain so that it becomes easier for everybody to understand. How do I do performance analysis? If you look at reporting standards, there are multiple reporting standards available, GRI being one of them. We do have SASB, we do have integrated reporting, we do have Value Reporting Foundation, we do have World Economic Forum. There are multiple and endless reporting standards which are available, which define material topic related KPIs. So going by GRI, if I identify that water is my material topic, what all KPIs do I need to report on? I need to report on my water withdrawal. Then water withdrawal from multiple sources, river, surface water, tap water, whatever it is. Then how much water, do I, how do I recycle? How much is the quantity which is actually being recycled? And then how much recycled water is actually used in my operation, right? What all water conservation measures am I taking care of, right? So these kind of KPIs, performance analysis means that for each of your material topics, you have to identify these KPIs, and then you have to see that how exactly have you been performing on all those KPIs. This will give you a trend, right? That, okay, your water consumption is going up, or your, let's say your recycled water is not that great, that figure needs to be enhanced. And then these recycled water should actually be put to use as well, right? Not just being recycled and then thrown away, right? It has to be recycled and it should be used in the process so that it reduces your consumption of fresh water, right? So all these things are required to be demonstrated. Then, now that you understand what is the important topic to you and you understand how have you been performing against that topic, the third important step is risk assessment, right? So now, if you have a trend of your water consumption, it becomes very important for you to analyze if you continue to use water this way. And I think a lot of us are aware in India also we are facing I'm in Mumbai, so I can see, water scarcity has been a problem, right? So how risk assessment is something that going by the trend, looking at how you have been performing against this material topic, does it pose any kind of risk to you? It does, right? So if I'm a water intensive industry, and if I am actually, taking consuming too much of water and it's on rise, right? So how should exactly I be taking care of my water consumption? Water scarcity can be a problem for me, right? So what do I do? Do I get indulged into something like drip irrigation? Do I start installing something like sprinklers, and should avoid wasting water? Should I recycle more water and put it to use? Should I start using STPs, ETPs? So many other things, right? This is just a high level example. And then once you know your risk as well, you assign your goals and targets. Goals and targets are to be assigned in such a way that, one, they are smart. When we say smart, it means it should be specific, measurable, accountable, reasonable, time bound, right? It should not be that I'll reduce my water consumption. No, it means that presently I'm on X kiloliters of water consumption. By this and this year, I'll be reducing. For example, 2020, I'm consuming X kiloliters, just a very high level example. By 2025, I'll bring my water consumption down by Y units. So my water consumption by 2026 would be X minus Y kiloliters, right? So it has to be specific, measurable, accountable, and time bound, right? So this is how your goal should be. And second, the most important thing, your goal should be such that it should be able to take care of the risk you have identified in the previous step. Now that you have set a goal for yourself, it becomes very important for you to establish some kind of a roadmap, right? How do I reduce my water consumption? Maybe I'll recycle more. Maybe I'll use water from STP. Maybe I'll, reduce my fresh water consumption. Maybe I'll start using water efficient techniques, so on and so forth, right? And your reporting is a reflection of all of this, right? Not that you have to come up with the reporting. So we write something random and produce it and say that this is our report. It's not that way. ESG journey or ESG strategy is not just coming up with any ESG report or sustainability report for that matter. It's about integrating ESG and sustainability in a holistic fashion in your end-to-end operations in such a way that it starts, making some positive impact over society, over environment, over governance, and your ethics and everything, data privacy and everything, right? And ESG reporting, it's just a medium. It's just a communication. It's just a way of communication to present that progress to everybody, right? It's most of the companies, there's a misconception that, coming up with a sustainability report is a task. No, sustainability report will automatically happen if you have your procedures sorted. So that is how it goes, right? Okay, so this is just an example of how exactly, which we already spoke about in the previous step. So how you should do your materiality, it talks about the same topic, that how you have to make sure that sustainability issues are being taken care of, stakeholder engagement, understand what are the issues need to be focused on. Performance analysis about selecting key performance indicators, establishing targets in a way that, it define KPIs and help you manage your sustainability data. Risk identification, you should understand what is going to impact companies' operation. I mean, we spoke about all of these things, and goals are to be set in such a way that, provide clear direction for company sustainability efforts. It should be ambitious, and it should really help, it should be based on the baseline data. Baseline data is something which comes from here, right? And then the roadmap development, which will help you create a strategic roadmap outlining the actions and initiatives which are needed to achieve these goals. You have to plan and prioritize that, okay, this activity probably will give me 80% reduction and will contribute to 50% achievement of my goal. So this is something I would want to do, and so on and so forth. Then we have ESG reporting, which is the last but not the least kind of a step, wherein you communicate company's progress on all these steps via report. Make sure that you enhance transparency, accountability, stakeholder trust. You make sure that you gather your data, you align reporting framework, and then accordingly, using the principle of that particular framework, you start developing it. And it has to be a regular exercise, which you have to do on an annual basis. You can go as frequent as you want, but generally that is how the industry trend has been. One of the important, I mean, even though we are, we do not really have that much of time, but I thought I'll quickly touch upon, because climate change happens to be one of the most important topics when we talk about ESG, right? And it's being focused by a lot of regulatory bodies and companies and FMPs. So how should you get started on your climate change related journey? Because climate change is it's not something wherein you directly collect the data and you just report it, right? It's beyond that. First and foremost stuff is, I'll just quickly, rush through these slides. First and foremost step is all about how do you get started with your GHG inventorization. When we say GHG inventorization, it's about understanding that how exactly do you calculate your scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emissions. You have to understand your business activity, you have to understand your geographies, you have to identify emission sources. For example, your gen set, right? Your packaging, your so many other stuff. Scope 1 actually stands for direct emissions, which come from the sources which you own, which an organization owns. Scope 2 is all about electricity, which is not, it's energy indirect, we call it scope 2, which is not under your control, but which are generally, emissions are coming from steam and electricity. And electricity also, there are two types of electricity, location based and market based, right? So it's about energy related indirect emissions, which are not under your control, but happening because of your operation. Scope 3, which is one of the major challenge, the most complicated stuff which organizations are struggling to deal with. This is about your end-to-end your value chain, your supply chain emission, that how your employees are commuting, what kind of business travel do you have, what kind of stuff you manufacture. And for example, I'm an organization wherein I prepare or I manufacture electrical devices, right? When these electrical devices are being used, what kind of emission does it lead to, right? So all those things fall under your scope 3 related emissions. Then you have to plan that how you set your targets. You can set your targets in line with SBTs. We spoke about SBTs. Science-based target is actually a methodology which help you set your target in line with climate science and the global Paris target of reducing and limiting temperature rise to 1.5 degree, although we are all set to breach that limit, which we had set for ourselves. But yeah, I mean, whatever good we can do, we all should contribute towards it. Monitor then once you have your goal and you have identified. So for example, if you have to reduce your energy intensity by 20%, emission intensity, sorry, by 20%, and you've identified certain activities that, okay, this much am I going to do through renewable energy, this is how I'm going to do through energy efficiency and renewable energy and so on and so forth, that all needs to be monitored, that how is it happening. And then reduction of overall activities by introducing energy efficiency related measures and all needs to be taken care of. Climate change reporting, actually there are multiple standards, right? Like we have multiple ESG reporting standards, we do have multiple standards when it comes to climate change, but we often keep on confusing these standards with one another. All these standards are not actually reporting standards. So for example, if we say WBCSG, WBCSG and WRI, which is World Business Council and Sustainable Development, World Resource Institute, they have come up with GHG protocol. GHG protocol is actually not for reporting. GHG protocol is something which helps you and which gives you a guidelines for assessing your carbon footprint, right? So this is one. SBT again is not a reporting standard. SBT is a methodology which helps you set your absolute reduction targets or intensity reduction target in line with climate science, right? TCFD is a standard which is about pure climate change, which talks about task force on climate related financial disclosures. They talk about all these aspects which I mentioned above: your governance, what climate change related governance you have in place, what is your strategy, how are you taking care of risk related aspects, and what are the metrics and targets. Similarly, CDP is an assessment way, right? CDP is an assessment. They actually assign you some score, while TCFD just a guideline. CDP actually assess your all information and they give you some kind of scope depending on your maturity. GRI, SASB, and IR are actually not climate reporting standards. They are ESG reporting standards, but they do have certain topics. Since GRI, for example, we spoke about water. GRI and everything, they have multiple KPIs for all ESG related topics, right? And climate change definitely is one of the most prominent topics. So that also comes into picture, and that is taken care of. So this is how it is. The last slide talks about, I don't know if the slide is entirely visible or not, but then, okay, fine. So this slide just clearly gives some kind of linkage of, how many multiple reporting standards we do have in place. We spoke about all of it actually already. The top row talks about GRI, it talks about ISSB, talks about TCFD. And then the lower bunch you see talks about CDP and CDSP, which are all about climate. And then you have your SASB. SASB is US-based sustainability reporting standards. You have IR. IR is integrating reporting. And then you have Value Reporting Foundation. So there is a new board or institution which is formed. I think most of you will be are already aware of this thing. It's ISSB, International Sustainability Standards Board. So ISSB is actually it was created by IFRS Foundation. The aim was actually to help like I mentioned in my previous slides, right? Investors and financial market participants are also bound to report on their sustainability progress, and for which they have to rely on information which is delivered, or which is produced, or which is published, or which is declared by companies, right? But when it comes to companies related information, it becomes very important to have a common framework, because if you have so many framework, everybody is using their own framework and coming up with some information, it becomes difficult. Multiple geographies, they do have their difference. For example, in India we have BRSR, and then we have CSRD in Europe, and then we have something else in US, and in Asia Pacific region also, Hong Kong have their own standard, Singapore has their own standard. Actually, it becomes very difficult. So what is happening otherwise is ISSB was created by IFRS, and their standard is still not out. It's still being prepared, right? We are expecting to have it out by January 2024, if I'm not wrong. Maybe this is updated, because like I said, these details are being updated as we talk. So, so all these standards are being, developed in tandem. Purpose of creation of ISSB is actually to have one standardized way, right, to compile all these standards. So ISSB in a way is either consolidating, or either getting influenced, or by taking cue from all these standards. They are expected to come up with two standards, one for overall ESG reporting, and second is going to be climate reporting. For overall ESG reporting, they are trying to be informed by SASB and IR, and which is also SASB and IR actually together they formed VRF, Value Reporting Foundation, and together it's going to be influencing ISSB. And for climate related part, it's also taken care by CDP and CDSP, because this is only climate related aspect, and also TCFD. So ISSB hopefully is going to be a standard which provides us with the much needed clarity and standardization and harmony among all these standards. So yeah, I think that is a bit of a monologue, and I'll take a pause, and it ends here from my side. And yeah, so this is it. Let me take a look. I think. Okay, we have questions. Let me just quickly try and go through these questions. Second. Okay. Yeah, so we have somebody saying something?
Madam, it is excellent, madam. Can we have your slides?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm glad I could help. It's a topic. Yeah.
It's a terrific presentation.
Thank you so much. Thank you. All right, let me see some questions. Is Government of India, and thank you so much for all your compliments. This is one topic which is extremely close to my heart, and I think it's very important for everybody to get together and share knowledge on this topic, because half of the time we are not able to get started because the concept is not very clear, right? And once we have the concept, I mean the Deloitte research which just came out 3-4 days back, it's the biggest testimony to this lack of clarity in the market, right? Although 80 to 90% of the businesses agree that this is very important, not more than 28% feel that they are ready to do it, right? And it's not because it's difficult or something. It's about the lack of clarity which organizations are not able to offer, which is why we feel these kind of forums are very important. I'll definitely circulate the presentation, and I'll share it with Dr. Gupta and CMA, and then it can be distributed to all accordingly. And white paper on ESG. All right. So every now and then, actually, so for nowadays, if you see, SEBI is very active in this area, right? BRSR, it's gone under revision multiple times, and we have seen that how exactly do we change its aspect, right? Every time they are defining that, okay, to make it easier for organizations, now they do not have to report on so many parameters, let's just bring it down to 50, right? ERPs should also do the ratings based on those parameters only. But at the same point in time, to make sure that the aspect of transparency is being taken care of, they are also making it mandatory for organizations to make sure that it's assured, it's third party assured, right? So I mean, even though I'm not very aware of the white paper as such, but there are multiple white papers available on ESG, on web, and I'm sure if you want to look at these, there'll be ample material available worldwide, right? So that is not a trouble. If it's planning, when will it be legislated and made mandatory rather than being obligatory in line with international standards? All right. So when we look at India, there is a concept of, if you only talk about climate change, which is one of the most important topics, there is a concept of jo last COP also happened. COP is Conference of Parties. Conference of Parties, it happens everywhere to see progress on Paris Accord, right? So what happens is this concept of just transition and loss and damage. When we say loss and damage and just transition, it means that developing economies and developed economies, they both cannot be given similar kind of load, when it comes to tackling or when it comes to dealing with the aspects of climate change. So this is one, very cognizant, everybody's being very cognizant of this aspect, that developing nations, for them it becomes a little difficult to take the brunt of this entire situation. So sometimes developing economies are given that kind of leeway that, okay, they can go a little slow, right? So which is why, I mean, even though India is doing really good, right? I mean, we do have something on BRSR. RBI is making it so many moves on their green bonds, and I'm also laying down certain procedures and everything for it. ERP is also being regulated. We are doing good, but I think making it mandatory in an economy like India, which is developing economy, it becomes little tough, right? So what we are trying to do is that developed countries should be contributing, because there is certain kind of fund which is being promised, right? So it should ideally come from developed countries, and developing countries can also join hands wherever possible. So looking at the positioning of India at the overall thing, even though we are committed to 2070, our net zero target, so many things are happening, so many states have their own action plan on climate change. I don't see something becoming super mandatory in India in the near future, and except for the rolling out of BRSR in a phased manner, doesn't look like that everything can be done. Okay, presentation duration can be more. ESG is a topic which is very difficult to cover, in this kind of duration. As per my discussion with Dr. Gupta, we tried to keep it. I mean, it should be important for everybody to, if I take something on net zero, yeah, it'll be very difficult, directly understanding net zero. It's very important to, because this general question that why should we do it? What is ESG? Is it some kind of a burden? No, but it's actually not, right? So it's very, we try to keep it that way, but hopefully, if possible, if time permits, if schedule permits, I'll definitely see how we can have another session on the consecutive topics. Yeah, I think we are almost there with the time, but yeah, I mean, I'm really, thankful to all of you for ISB versus GRI, which standards are followed in general by Indian corporates. All right. So ISSB standards are not yet published, right? We are expecting to have the standards in January of next year. But generally, if you see the standards, all these standards, no matter what standard it is, it's going to have 80% overlap, right? It's not very different. If you see the aspect of materiality, that's going to stay there. The only difference could be GRI earlier was little retrospective, but GRI also keeps on evolving in its own self. GRI is about material topic, your performance on the same, and then how do you manage? What is your GRI is about material topics, your performance analysis, and DMA, disclosure on management approach. For example, water is my topic. How do I manage water, right? So that is one aspect, that how do we actually manage a water related bit. So that is what GRI is all about now. But IR, if you look at IR, VRF, ISSB, they are trying to be little futuristic in their approach. When we say futuristic in their approach, futuristic clearly means that they have to make sure that one is you are performing this way, but second is, if you continue to perform this way, how is it going to be impacted, right? So like TCFD, it's not just about that how are you performing today. It's about, if you continue to perform this way, how is it going to impact the environment and everything. So it's all about impact based reporting, which is becoming important day by day. So this is how it works, which is the most important thing. But otherwise, if you see, most of these standards are very well in tandem with each other. It's not a lot different. But yeah, it's always good to be proactive and go a little impact based, because our future is all about impact. It's nobody cares that how are you performing today. So if I say that I consume water this way, I'm reducing water. This is GRI. But if you say, if I continue to use water this way, maybe it will rise the water table of this area by this much. Maybe I'll be able to use this water for other activities, right? So you have to put it in way of impact. For example, in social, if you do something, it's fine. But if you're educating women, how is it helping them earn their livelihood? How is it helping them raise their value of statistical life? How is it increasing their willingness to pay, right? So many other things. So yeah, thank you so much, Nishan. We are already connected on LinkedIn. So yeah, do you think India's decarbonization target of 2070 is making it any difficult to adopt sustainability standards at compared to West, given the fact sustainability makes better business sense? I mean, if we look at India, there's a lot of aspects required to be considered. In India, we already started to be so active in last couple of years, right? We have not been so active otherwise, but yeah, we did have our NDCs in place, designated targets in place in line with Paris Accord, and we did have already 35% of GDP, emission intensity of GDP reduction were already there. But 2070 target came in recently. While I don't think this is impacting other sustainability related adoption in India. We are going fine, but it actually depends, right? So for example, earlier in BRSR, we had multiple indicators. Now the indicators actually have been reduced to 49 and 50, right? And then ERPs are also requested to have one rating wherein they just have to rate organization on these 50 parameters. They can still consider other performance, but they are requested to have introduce these kind of ratings. It's still in consultation. I see it really difficult. If you ask me my opinion, it can be really difficult for rating agencies to introduce different kind of core rating product only for India, right? But let's see how it goes. But I honestly don't feel that since we have adopted decarbonization target, it's going to impact everything else. It's pretty much goes in tandem. It depends on what kind of priority as a developing country we want to adopt. If you ask me, 2070 target also, it looks a little difficult unless we just make some real progress, even though we are staying ahead of our renewable targets and everything. But yeah, it also requires all-round development. And anything related to sustainability, I think will definitely, in a way, if not directly or indirectly, it contributes to your emission target for sure. Okay, then there's another question. As a beginner, which standard should I start in? Okay, if in case you want to do something in the field of ESG, the one important, the easiest standard would be to get started with GRI, because GRI is the mother of all these standards. These were the first standards, and still one of the most widely adopted standard across the globe, right? So I think that is, if you want to develop your understanding, it's very good to get started with GRI. GRI definitely serves as a great purpose. All right, okay, fine. How social auditors can play a role in ESG investing? Definitely. So social auditors purely, like I'm not very sure if I understand correctly, because social is not my domain directly. But yeah, I mean, because you must be contributing towards assuring or providing assurance to all these ESG social related products, right? It becomes very important for it's a huge part to play to make sure that whatever social impact we are trying to create, it's going in the right direction. So if you have heard terms like SA 8000 or something like SROI, social return on investment, right? Whenever we do ESG, there are two parts to it. One is the environment bit. Second is, so for example, there was a project I did on externalities of coal. So externalities of coal, one is about it raises to emissions, we have pulverization, all those things are there. Burning, combustion, pollution, climate change, that's one. Another part to it is it causes pulverization when you break it into pieces, when you crush it into a dust, which makes it easier to get combusted. When you're traveling through areas, it causes respiratory illness, in children of those areas. Also, there are methods like travel cost method. If we are traveling, hedonic pricing, housings and prices go down, right? So how exactly the social impact is, downside and upside of both of these, aspects are being taken care of for any organization. So social impact assessment is very important part in this entire paradigm to make sure that it's not just a singular growth, it's overall growth, and it's inclusive and integrated growth, which we are contributing towards, and that definitely raises your credibility. So I mean, for such assurance, social auditors and organization plays very important part, without which it will not be possible to do such a thing. So I think with this, we reached the end of the session, right? I'm dropping a link to my the LinkedIn profile. I shared the something to related to the presentation that we'll be having. I'll be happy to have your feedback. It'll be great if you could just go and say what did you like the most in the presentation and how was it like. But thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking out this time. I know it's a bit of a monologue. So it's a bit of a monologue, and yeah, so yeah, thank you so much for bearing with me and being there, and thanks to Dr. Gupta for organizing this session and giving us all a forum to get connected. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for taking this session. It was really informative and knowledge gaining session to everyone. Thank you once again to taking this.
Thank you so much.
Thank
I'm
you.
glad. Thank you.
So we just conclude the session over here. Thank you.
Thank you.